And of course, Delta is the last major airline to add that middle seats back. I myself have been on a number of flights in which I've actually had to sit in the middle seat as of late. Let's bring in Sara Nelson, president of the Association of Flight Attendants International, which represents 50,000 of aviation's first responders at 20 airlines. Sara, I want to first get your take on this hiring and staffing question. What we've heard from Delta and United over the past several days, how easy or difficult is it going to be to fill those holes?
So it's not very easy to fill those holes at all, which is why we proposed last March in the CARES Act relief that would keep aviation workers in our jobs. When when there's a lapse in our employment, we lose current qualifications because you cannot go to training. When you come back, you are required to have more training. There are COVID protocols in the training centers right now. So it's very difficult for airlines to staff up. But this is one of the very good things that Congress did with our imploring, was to put in place the payroll support system for the aviation workers. And there was a lapse in that from October 1st through December 28th, where people were furloughed. They were recalled to their jobs. And what we're finding just among the flight attendant ranks alone is that lapse in qualifications from October 1st to December 28th, even though we're getting those people paid, they're still in some cases waiting for a training date to return to actual schedule of flying. So it's so important that now, as demand is coming back, we are ready and able to lift people up in the air. And if we had not had this program in place, this is something we talked about last March and all through the year, we would not be able to meet that demand. And Delta Airlines actually made some very deep cuts, more than others, cut back on hours, and that is why you're seeing them in the position that they are now.
And of course, one interesting aspect of this will be some of the airlines themselves reduce their capacity, literally taking planes out of service. We know here in Canada, Air Canada has said it will be 3 to 5 years before it gets back to its pre-pandemic capacity, partly because of that reduction. It takes time to ramp back up. What's your expectation? We saw, travelers were almost, you saw the TSA numbers there, almost back to the pre-pandemic, actually getting back to pre-pandemic. Do you think you'll get your staffing back to where it was?
Well, look, we're going to be smaller, no doubt. But we're going to have all those airplanes back up in the air. And that takes mechanics on the job who are certified. It takes all the people who prepare that plane to get up in the air. It takes people in the kitchens, even loading the proper items on board to be able to get people food and water during the flight. So all of this is much better planned, actually, than Canada. In the United States, we took a position that we needed to keep the staff in place with our security credentials and our safety credentials so that we would be able to meet this demand. And sure enough, we were right. And so all of the airline employees being in place and ready to do this by this summer is going to be very important. But the other thing that's going to be very important is that business travel resumes. Right. So while we're seeing TSA numbers up, we're not seeing revenues up because we don't have that business travel back yet. And of course, that will also require international travel as well. So we've got to be coordinating with other countries and be lifting those bans when it is safe and as it is safe and have the risk mitigation factors in place. But all of that will require the airline industry fully resuming.
Sara, I want to ask you a safety question. Do you think vaccination should be required for flight attendants?
Vaccinations need to be accessible to all flight attendants. There are exceptions, so we have to understand that in any case there are exceptions, and we've got to take that on a case-by-case basis. But we are encouraging all of our members to get vaccinated. One of our biggest issues was that vaccinations were being handled by states. So this was very fluctuating in the way that flight attendants could have access to that vaccine. We're still focusing on making sure that that is accessible, setting up vaccination clinics at the airports, not only for the transportation workers there, but also for the communities that are around those airports as well. So we're continuing to work on distributing that vaccine and making sure everybody can get it in their arm who wants it.
For sure, but once that's happened, what kind of measures are you taking as a union, as a group, to try to make sure that there's some sort of formal passport system? We've already seen some states outright rejecting that concept. Would it not make your workers more safer on the job if there was such a system in place?
Look, there's a lot of problems with the passport concept. I think there can be some best practices in place. What we can do is we can speed up the process in the airport. we're going to have questions about COVID for a very long time. We're going to have temperature checks. We're going to have all these other risk mitigation factors. If you are able to confirm that you've had the vaccine and have some sort of passport in a voluntary program, much like the CLEAR program today, where people volunteer their biometrics to speed up the process of security, that will help to alleviate a lot of the stress and strain as people check in at the airports. But it cannot be a required program because there will be disadvantages there and equity problems, and we have seen this in the past. So we do not want to bar people from having access to flying just because of a passport. It can be an additional tool, but it shouldn't be required.
Sara, I want to widen this out beyond travel and just speak to you as a union leader. How confident are you in a labor movement revival in the U.S.?
People are ready. People are ready more than ever. Oftentimes in labor organizing, it takes a common experience, and we've never had a common experience like we have in the past year about safety in the workplace or lack thereof. And all of the stress and strain of not having access to jobs, our safety net programs not really covering what needs to be there for people. So I believe that we are primed and ready to organize. And you're seeing that, of course, in the vote in Alabama right now, taking on the largest corporation in the world, Amazon. And I think that you're going to see a lot of labor organizing. And that is also echoed by the President of the United States and in all of the plans and policies that he's putting forward.
Sara, great to have you with us. Appreciate your time. Sara Nelson is president of the Association